Last week, when the Fourth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals unanimously upheld the 2017 death penalty decision for Dylann Roof, that's the white supremacist who murdered 9 black congregants in cold blood at one of the most symbolic and historic black churches in the country, I shared with my viewers an unpopular opinion. Take a look. You take somebody who did one of the most awful things we've ever seen or heard, and then you give him the death penalty, and everybody says, okay, fine. So there are cases where the death penalty works. And then guess what happens? The death penalty is then used not just for the Dylann Roofs of the world, not just for the Boston Marathon bombers. It's far more often going to be used against black and brown people. As it generally goes with unpopular opinions, this one also got a bunch of boos and thumbs down on social media. People made their own pages just to tell me how dumb I was. So I wanted to invite someone who can intelligently verbalize the disagreement that many people feel with my opinion. Joining me now is Rizza Islam. He is a researcher, an international activist, and a member of the Nation of Islam. Brother Islam, welcome to the show. I say, even for the Dylann Roofs of the world, we shouldn't practice the death penalty. That's my position. I just want to stipulate that. Just to be clear, I'm not saying we should have a death penalty, but just exclude this one white killer. I'm saying it shouldn't be for anybody, and he shouldn't be an exception. What do you say?
Interestingly enough, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I have not seen yourself or others come out and say that when it comes to a black person per se, when it comes to one who was actually guilty with overwhelming evidence and who has admitted to committing the actual crime. That is the only reason why. I'm kind of confused here. He goes into a church with malice aforethought. He planned to kill people. He did it. He admitted to it. And he even laughed and said, I want to make it crystal clear. I do not regret what I did. So at that point, there is no question. He deserves the death penalty, seeing how he removed 9 lives. His life is not worth 9, not even worth 1.
I think that's a solid argument in terms of the heinousness of Dylann Roof's crimes. I wouldn't dispute that. It was malice aforethought. He decided to go into a church and kill 9 people. I can't imagine a more disgusting thing to do. As far as your initial point, I always say no death penalty. For me, the death penalty isn't about innocence or guilt. I'm saying that for 3 primary reasons we shouldn't do it. 1, we get it wrong too often. 2, it doesn't stop crime from happening or murder from happening. And 3, America doesn't have the moral authority to kill its citizens or to decide who gets to live or die. That's my premise. But yeah, I absolutely have stood out against black folk who have done acts that they're guilty of. But my primary energy, you're right, is spent on black people who are innocent. We got people like Troy Davis, who we fought for, Tukey Williams, who we fought for. I've spent the last few decades fighting on behalf of Mumia Abu-Jamal. And so I spend a lot of energy on those cases. And part of it, brother, is tactical. It's much easier to say, look, this brother's innocent. This sister's innocent. And so if y'all are about to kill an innocent person, then you may not know how many other people are also innocent. So let's stop the practice altogether.
Well, interestingly enough, and to all the people that you just mentioned, they actually have solid, justifiable reasons which determine and demonstrate why their innocence will be more than likely. They have not admitted to crimes. They did not commit crimes blatantly in a heinous malice aforethought setting. They did not write it in journals. They did not promote it all over social media. Some of them, of course, when they committed certain crimes or whatever they were accused of doing, they did it before social media existed. But I'm saying in this circumstance, a white man does not have to be put to death in order to justify extending or expanding death to happen for black men. They do that, period. They kill us, period, because we are black men in America. That's why they do it. We are guilty until proven innocent, rather than innocent until proven guilty in America by virtue of our skin color alone. They believe, and they have put in books, they have put in laws, they have put in propaganda that the black man is inherently evil, inherently wicked, inherently insane. He wants to kill, he wants to rape, he wants to murder. So that is how they have foisted this type of characteristic and how they have mischaracterized us generally. But I don't believe that this individual serving for the actual crime that he committed and falling into the penalty, which he rightfully deserves and that he admitted to, I don't think that's going to be used to then say, you know what, now let's put to death more innocent black people when we already do that. Long before Dylann Roof was born in 1994, we've done that. After his death, we're going to still do that. I don't see that correlating. I don't see that being a logical argument whatsoever. And I think that's why you received the pushback you did, because he is a blatant, admitted, open devil who did what he did. And because of that, there is no justifiable reason whatsoever, to keep him alive. There is no reason. He deserves the death that he has literally given to other people. The Bible says it, the Holy Quran says it, logic says it, science says it. You reap what you sow, you got what you gave, and what goes around comes around, and he definitely deserves what he dished out to others.
So there's two things here, and I would disagree. I think my argument is logical, even if you disagree with it. My logic is that the government will use the obvious innocence of Dylann Roof as a pretext for saying, look, there are some crimes that are so heinous and so obvious that you deserve to die. But then what they'll do is they'll take black folk whose crimes aren't so clear, right, that are actually fuzzy, but present them as if there's something else. How many innocent black men and women have we seen on death row where they said the punishment is obvious, that the evidence is incontrovertible, we got proof that this awful thing this black man did, and then they get executed, and then 20 years later we find out that heinous, awful, obvious thing that's indisputable, that sometimes they confess to, sometimes 10 witnesses saw, wasn't actually true. And the other point you make, and we're gonna take a break and come back because I want to talk this through with you, make sure we got plenty of time, is you're saying that he deserves to die. Let's say I don't necessarily agree with the idea of deserving to die in the way that you're saying it, but I think him being dead is justice. If he had been killed in that church by somebody with a gun, you wouldn't hear me tripping saying somebody made a wrong decision. The question for me isn't whether or not he deserves to die, it's whether or not the American government has the authority to make that decision. If you're talking about Qurans and Bibles and science, even if I decided to say let's appeal to that for law, which I don't think we should, those scriptures don't say to trust Pharaoh's government. It doesn't say to trust the evil government. It doesn't say trust the Roman state to decide Jesus' punishment, right? The point here isn't whether or not the person is guilty. The question is who has the power to dispense it. And this isn't just a philosophical argument for me. In fact, let me pause here because I don't want to talk too much before the break. I want to hear want you to engage with me. Stay right here, people. Rizza Islam is in the building. We're gonna talk about a lot of stuff here. Take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Black News Tonight. I'm continuing my discussion about the death penalty in light of the recent decision to uphold capital punishment for white supremacist killer Dylann Roof. I'm back with Rizza Islam. He's an international activist, researcher, and a member of the Nation of Islam. My brother, what I said right before the break basically was, I agree that deserve might be the case. Dylann Roof deserves a whole bunch of stuff. But do we necessarily want to empower the United States government of all governments to have the right to kill its citizens? Because it's not a one-off. This is a policy that would take place not just for white supremacists who are obviously killers, but for all those black and brown people on death row, many of whom are innocent.
Well, I would say I don't think we can now try to give America a moral compass when she herself does not have a moral compass. She carries out being a judge, jury, and executioner on a daily basis when it comes to black, brown people, for the most part, and some white people as well. When these domestic terrorists, or some people call them police officers, certain ones who carry out murder, who carry out killing someone when they do not have all the evidence, when they do not have any justifiable reason, when they have used excessive force. So America does this on a consistent basis. However, when it comes to someone who has committed a crime, who has admitted to that crime, who laughed about the crime that they committed and then said that they did it completely on purpose and they do not regret it, and they violated the law 9 times over. In that circumstance, I would say America is actually being just when she is following that law and that penalty, which is putting a person to death who has overwhelmingly described, demonstrated, and have calculated in that manner that they deserve it. So I'm not going to say that now let us look at a moral compass and say, well, this may be used to be carried out on black people when they already carry it out on us with far less evidence, far less anything. We cannot try to justify it now all of a sudden when it is a white person who deserves it. It's just plain and simple. If it were a black man who did all of these exact same things, I would say the same thing because of what he did by way of his actual crime committed. It's overwhelming. So some of the other people that we brought up, they did not have this overwhelming circumstance. They didn't admit to the crime. There is no evidence that they committed it. For a lot of the people that you mentioned are named. But in this situation, it's completely different. There is no justifiable reason. And I know you mentioned Rome and Babylon and different things of that nature. When it comes to this government, we live in America. So there are laws. And I believe America says something that is very famously known, which is ignorance is no excuse for breaking the law. He wasn't ignorant. He was completely within his right mind, to do exactly what it is that he planned to do. And because of that, okay, he admitted it, and he should face the consequences. America does what she does. She kills innocent people across the planet. She murders people wholesale for nothing, and says that it is a justifiable reason for democracy, for spreading democracy, etc., when it is for oil, when it is for money, when it is for vested interests of different groups and organizations, and it has nothing to do with righteousness whatsoever. So in this exact same case, this has nothing to do with expanding potentially for Black people or everyone else who doesn't deserve to die. This is someone who deserves it, who made it very clear that they deserve it, and he should absolutely face the consequences for his actions.
So I agree with your analysis of America's behavior domestically and abroad. So I think we agree we agree on a couple of things here. We agree that Dylann Roof is a monster. He's a human being, but he's behaving like a monster. We agree that that America doesn't have moral authority and doesn't have a moral compass, that America moves in its own best interest as a nation. We agree on that. My concern, and I agree, you should follow the law. My argument here isn't that we should change the law for Dylann Roof. My argument is that as a nation, we should commit and fight to change laws. In the same way that in the 50s and 60s we fought to change laws. In the 2000s we have fought to change laws to make them more fair, to make them more equitable. We fight to leave the world better than we found it. That's part of our struggle. Even our brother Malcolm X, when he decides to attempt to hold America accountable in international court, the goal is to finally make America accountable to somebody, like an international body, some authoritative body for its behavior. So we're constantly trying to fight to make a wicked system a little more bearable for everyday people. So I'm with you on that. And one of the things we've been successful at in the last 20 years has been to move the death penalty away. And here's why I'm concerned about keeping a death penalty on the books at all. Because I know people out there say just what you just said. Look, there's some extreme cases where guilt is indisputable, whether it's the Boston Marathon bomber, whether it's Dylann Roof. We know this person did it. Again, I would just repeat that some people had the same certainty about Emmett Till. So I'm always concerned about this idea of legal certainty when it comes to folks, especially when it comes to Black folks. So I don't want the precedent on the books at all, even for white folk. Not because I give a damn about Dylann Roof. I'm just saying because of that. But the other piece of it for me is that the death penalty is often used against Black people to get them to plead to things they didn't do. You know how many brothers and sisters have gotten railroaded and they say, take this plea. Most of these court decisions we see both in state court and federal court, it's not a court of trials, it's a court of pleas. They go to you and say, look, if you don't take this deal, you might get the death penalty. If you don't take this deal, you might get life. And as long as the death penalty is dangled, a lot of Black people who can't afford representation, who are facing racist juries, they end up taking a plea because they're scared of getting executed by a wicked state. So by taking the death penalty off the table, we also give Black and brown people a better chance of fighting their cases. So you feel free to respond to that, but I also want to ask you a very specific question. If you knew that taking Dylann Roof off of death row would save the lives of Black people on death row, if you were certain of that, would you be willing to take him off of death row, or would the principle be bigger than that particular issue?
Well, to respond to the first thing, I would say, because in that case, what you're talking about, for example, you brought up Emmett Till. Emmett Till did not admit to raping anyone. Emmett Till did not admit to doing any of the things that they accused him of. Emmett Till did not admit to any of that. He was profiled, he was taken, he was beaten horrifically beyond recognition. And then his mother wanted the casket to be held open so that everyone could see exactly what this system does. That was a completely different circumstance. Carolyn Bryan Dunham, who was a devil, the one who lied, later on, I believe it was a few years ago, came out and admitted that he did not do what she accused him of doing. So that is a completely different circumstance. This individual, Dylann Storm Roof, did what he did, admitted to doing it, planned it, wrote about it, posted about it. He did everything to let everybody know, check this out, I did it on purpose. I killed 9 folks. I left 3 alive to let everybody know, to tell the story. Yeah, I laughed at them when they forgave me. I didn't even ask them for forgiveness. What's wrong with them? He is a blatant, pure devil. He did it. Period. And if anyone else of any color, shade, religion, ethnic background did the same exact thing, then I would say they deserve the same penalty. However, to your latter point, when it comes to whether or not saving the life or preventing him from being on death row and just having a life sentence or 9, 10 life sentences instead, if that would help to save the lives of Black people, well, of course, in that type of instance, I would have to say yes, but the likelihood of that happening, I would say, is slim to almost 100,000% -0. So I don't think we can even try to bring comparison. So obviously, yes, of course, in that situation, because my first concern is our people, and then second is all of humanity after that. But no, he's they don't give a damn about, saving black folks when it comes to this one white person. Well, if we take him off of death row, we'll give you 5 black lives. That's not how it goes. I like the way that you brought that up, though. That analogy was nice, but that's not realistic.
Well, I think it is, my brother, and I'll tell you why before we go. I'll tell you why, and I'll give you the last word. It's not that I think that they want to make a trade like it's the NBA or something. What I think is that the United States government is far more willing to execute black people than white people, and far more willing to execute poor people than middle class or wealthy people. And if you're poor and black, and the odds are completely against you. I think we agree on that point. And what I'm saying is that the government wants to continue to have a system that executes black people. And they are willing to dangle one random, obviously guilty white person in front of us at a moment where people are against the death penalty, so that people go, oh, yeah, we do need that. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the same government that's willing to do a Tuskegee experiment, the same government that's willing to settler colonize the entire country and wipe out native populations, the same country willing to enslave African people, that same government that did COINTELPRO, that same government that was committed to killing Dr. King, that government is absolutely willing to maintain a system of capital punishment for population control, for executing people who aren't guilty, and for criminalizing black and brown people, and for maintaining a broader system of prison. That's what I'm saying. And to me, Dylann Roof becomes low-hanging fruit. They'll throw away a poor white Dylann Roof so that they can continue to kill us? Absolutely. And to me, what I struggle with is how people, like a brother like you who has a brilliant analysis of the state, a brilliant analysis of the American government, would want to cede that kind of authority to the government, knowing what they do. And I get your point that they're going to do it anyway, but I'm saying we can resist, we can fight it, and we can win, because that's what black people always do. What do you say? I'll give you the last word.
Well, on that point, I would say beautiful statement, beautiful analogy. The difference is, of course, black people's lives are not dependent upon white people's lives being saved. This government is only under the authority of God, and that is who they are supposed to submit to. They don't even submit to the world court. America does not submit to those dealing with the Geneva Convention. America does not submit to, when it comes to international powers, the United Nations, and it is a joke to them, which is why America withdrew from the United Nations Human Rights Council, because she was committing blatant human rights violations. She said, well, because the United Nations is corrupt. No, all of them are corrupt. So at this point, it is not a circumstance where, well, you know what, maybe if we prevent this life from being taken away, but just put him in jail for life, that will help us to curtail or prevent other black people who will potentially more than likely be innocent from losing their life to a death penalty. I like the theory. However, in reality, if a person has committed a blatant wrong at such a high level, he is not low-hanging fruit. That was a mass murder. That was a heinous, horrific act. That was blatant. It was a neo-Nazi, white supremacist, anti-black racist murdering spree that he committed, and he bragged about it. At that point, you are not low-hanging fruit. You are at one of the highest levels, just like his ancestors were. So at that point, he has to be made an example of by him actually, because in this position, America got it right. That's the difference. This case, they got it right. Other cases, a lot of the times they get it wrong. But in this case, they got it right, and it has to be exacted, not because they have the authority, but because it is right. It is a wrong being righted. It's not about, oh, white and black in this situation. It is about right and blatant wrong. And if blatant wrong is not checked, then they will have a justifiable reason to then let others go in certain cases. That's when you go into rape and sex trafficking and all that. And then you have lesser and lesser crimes. If you want to lessen this death penalty, then other crimes are going to be lessened as well. And then you will have a complete country in anarchy and chaos. And therefore, we will not have any form of basic righteousness, because we barely have any rule of law. We barely have any order. We barely have anything of that nature in America right now. And it's becoming weaker and weaker by the day. So if we want to still follow Satan, then we'll make excuses for him. But if we want to actually have a level of righteousness, as God does say in all holy books and in logic, then when it comes to certain situations like this, to exact the judgment and punishment, not because of America's authority, but because of what is right, then that is something that I believe will give an example to the rest of the world that, okay, they are doing what is right. Whether he was black or white, this crime definitely deserves that punishment.
All right, my brother Rizza Islam, thank you so much for joining me. I love the conversation, and you got to come back because I know we got some COVID vaccine debates that we got to have. People keep telling me we got to have it, so we're gonna have that. But I'm gonna make sure you come back real soon so we could do that. Everybody, make sure you join the conversation as well. We want to hear from you. Head over to our BNC Instagram and Twitter pages. Let us know how you feel. Go to BNC News handle. Also visit our website bnc.tv and subscribe to our YouTube page. You can check out clips from the show, including the debate you just saw.